Good afternoon, and welcome to Mountain Musings Character Traits of a Good Husband, episode number 2. Uh, this one is titled Not a Boss. Some of you might kind of wonder why I'm spending so much time on this. And one of the things that is on my heart that I notice is that uh, often marriages, end up in divorce, but more often I see marriages that fail to reach the the heights that I believe God has intended for our marriage. Marriage should be a mystical and great and wondrous thing. And so I've decided to spend a little time exploring this concept. And as I mentioned, my intent is to look at this from the lens of what character traits do women respect. The passage that I want to take as our key passage today comes from Matthew chapter 20, verse 28. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. Matthew 20, verse 28. When I was in the Army, one of my best friends in the Army truly exemplified this. He was my immediate supervisor, and I saw through the course of our time together as soldiers, he was my supervisor. He truly laid down his life for his soldiers. He considered everyone who worked for him as someone who was dear to him, someone who was close to his heart. And so he really poured out his life, making sure that not only did we complete the mission that we were assigned, which was a difficult one, but he also made sure that we succeeded. Before he took care of himself, he took care of us. He truly exemplified that. And we we were able to enjoy off-duty time together. And so I got to know his family somewhat and saw that he did the same sort of thing with his wife and children. And so when I sat down and sent out messages to women, I sent one to his wife, who's also my friend, and she responded back. And in her response was this wonderful nugget. She said, "A good husband should be a leader, not a boss." And I really spent a lot of time thinking about that. This idea of being a leader and not a boss. Sadly, most of us spend most of our time camped on the wives being in submission and never really thinking about, or a lot about, what kind of man is worthy of being in submission to. And she really, in one sentence, kind of nailed it. A husband should be a leader, not a boss. And so I want to stop and think about today. Are we being leaders or are we being bosses? Interestingly, the Army spends a great deal of time and effort teaching NCOs and officers how to be leaders at all levels. We consistently, throughout our career, spend time uh, going to do what we call officer professional development. And that's a place where we work on our ability as leaders. The Army spends a lot of expends a lot of effort in helping us to be leaders and not bosses. Once, when I was a lieutenant a million years ago, uh, the USER commander scheduled an officer professional development aimed at young lieutenants. And interestingly, the main speaker was the head chaplain. And at the time, I was kind of bemused as to why he would choose the chaplain. Why have a chaplain come speak to us about leadership? So the chaplain got up, and his talk was all centered on the life of Christ. And he drew leadership examples from the various things that Christ did in his life. And at the end of his speech, we were all kind of sitting there trying to, as we would say today, process this. We were thinking about it. And the USAR commander, if I remember correctly, he was a four-star general. He got up and said, Lieutenants, that is perhaps the best leadership speech I have ever heard. I hope you stop and think about it and pattern your behavior after that of Christ. And at the time, I was kind of shocked, but as the years went on, as my time in the military unfolded, I began to realize that truly leaders needed to be people who laid down their lives. Uh, Interestingly, in the last evening before Christ's crucifixion, one of the things that he did was he stopped, he picked up a basin, he picked up a towel and washed the disciples' feet. And when he got to Peter, Peter was, no, you shall not do this. You can't wash my feet. And Jesus says, uh, if you don't let me wash your feet, then you have no part in me. And he's speaking about the exact moment there where he's conducting the ceremony. But I also think in a very real and true way, Jesus is saying, if you don't pattern your life after me, then you have no part in me. And uh, Jesus wants us to understand that being a leader is truly picking up the basin, picking up the towel, and being a servant. Again, returning to my time in the military when I was very early on in my career, when I was still enlisted, I was a squad leader. So I got to enter into the first level of Army leadership, being a squad leader. And uh, one of the things that was expected of me was to eat last. Now, I was in the 4th platoon, the 4th squad of the 4th platoon of the company, which meant, as far as the enlisted was concerned, I was always the last guy in the company to go into the chow hall. And invariably, I would get my tray, sit down, and about that time, the senior drill would stand up and cry out, all right, Alpha Company, you have 5 minutes to finish your chow and be outside in formation. And I learned two things from this experience. Number one, that being a squad leader, putting my fellow soldiers first, required sacrifice on my part. And secondly, and at the time, quite important to me, I discovered you can eat an entire meal in 5 minutes, which goes a long way to explaining why, even to this day, I tend to eat very quickly. I just spend a lot of time shoveling food down my throat. The whole point of this is, when we think of the marriage relationship, are we spending our time trying to be a boss, or are we spending our time trying to be a leader, and trying to be a leader as Christ would have us to be a leader? Are we seeking to serve our wives? Or are we really just kind of wanting to tell them what to do? If you look at my house, you will find usually that the remote control for the television is next to where I sit. And I think that says something about me, and also the relationship between me and Christy. And one of the things that I think it says is that I tend to lean toward being in charge. How often am I willing to give up the remote to let Christy have the remote? Uh, Kind of an interesting thought, but am I, in all aspects of my life, trying to find ways to serve my wife, to set the conditions for Christy to be successful? Uh, Christy doesn't need a boss. A boss is very different than a leader. One of the reasons why the Army, generally speaking, does not reach into the industrial world for its leadership training is the industrial world focuses on a boss, and a boss understands what the job is that needs to be done and directs the action. You do this, you do that, you do this other thing so we can do whatever it is that we need to do. And an Army leader does something very differently. Yes, they put forth the mission, a mission that is normally received from a higher headquarters. We put forth the mission, but really my job as a leader is to set the conditions for my soldiers to be successful, make sure they're trained, properly fed, properly equipped, and then lead the charge. In other words, I go first. In my house, am I doing that? Am I looking for ways that I can help Christy be successful in whatever it is that the Lord is leading her to do? Am I truly seeking to serve her, to make it easier for her to have a good relationship with the Lord? My wife and your wives, they don't need another boss. The world is full of bosses. They don't need someone to hold them accountable. Uh, they need someone to set the conditions for their success, and they need someone to look for ways to make their lives easier in serving the Lord. This is what it means to pick up the basin and the towel. We as husbands should be displaying servant leadership. In the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus puts it this way: the greatest among you shall be your servant. Whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted. Matthew chapter 23, verses 11 and 12. Two things. As a leader, I should be looking for ways to serve. That's my job. I'm a servant. If I want to be a leader, I need to be the servant to everyone. And in a little bit of a twist at the end, Jesus reminds me that if I seek to glorify myself, I'm going to be humbled. But if I humble myself, then I will be exalted. If I humble myself, then I will emerge as the true leader. Uh, as an officer in the Army, to be honest, I enjoyed the salutings and the trappings of military respect, especially as I gained some rank and some experience. I liked that. But the truth is, I needed to put my men's needs first. And when I do that, respect flows. When I demand respect from my soldiers, they gave it and gave it grudgingly. In a like way, if I try and demand respect from Christy, she's probably going to comply simply because she's a godly woman. But if I serve her, if I seek out ways to lay down my life to make her life better, then the respect naturally flows. I don't have to demand it because I'm behaving in a way that is worthy of respect. So, if we want to have wives that respect us, then one of the things that we need to do is learn how to be true leaders, to pick up the basin, to pick up the towel, and to serve our wives, to put their needs first. And if we do that, then, as my friend's wife said, we will not be a boss, we'll be a leader. And respect will come naturally. I hope that you've enjoyed this. I encourage you to go on the web page and look at the printed copy. I've included some thought questions on there, things for us to think about as we go into this next week and learning how to show respect for our wives, how to lay down our lives and be truly men that are worthy of respect, so our wives don't have a problem respecting us. As always, please leave a comment, leave a like, leave a dislike if I'm doing it badly. Leave suggestions for ways that I can make this better, not only in terms of delivery, but in terms of content. I know that I can grow in all areas that involve this. Thank you for your time and have a good day.